The busiest airports are filled with thousands of goodbyes every single day. Some are temporary, some last forever. But on one rainy Tuesday morning at Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos, one goodbye would destroy a family and change countless lives. Cold rain tapped against the airport's giant glass windows. Passengers hurried through the terminal, dragging suitcases behind them. Flight announcements echoed overhead. Inside Terminal 2, a little boy of about 7 years old sat weakly on a metal chair. His breathing was heavy. He leaned against his mother's shoulder. She gently wiped the sweat from his forehead with a small handkerchief. Her name was Amara. Her son was Ethan, and she looked exhausted.
Mom, I feel cold.
It's okay, sweetheart. We'll see the specialist soon. I promise you'll feel better.
There was a time when Daniel couldn't spend a single hour away from his family. Now, he couldn't wait to leave them behind.
Daniel, you came. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind.
I didn't come to argue. I came to finish this.
What is this?
I'm done, Amara. I can't keep living like this. Every hospital visit, every medical bill, every prayer. I'm tired.
You're leaving us. When your son needs you the most?
I need a different life. I deserve happiness too.
Daddy, did I do something wrong?
No, this isn't about you.
Daddy!
As the automatic doors closed behind him, Daniel believed he was walking away from a life of pain. He had no idea that he had just walked away from the woman who owned the very airline whose planes filled the sky above him. And before the sun set, his biggest regret would begin. Before we continue, if stories filled with shocking twists, emotional moments, and unforgettable endings are your kind of entertainment, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss our next story. Now, let's continue. There are moments in life when a broken heart doesn't make a sound. It simply stands there, unable to move. For a long moment, Amara remained frozen. The boarding passes trembled in her hands. She wasn't crying because her husband had walked away. She was crying because her little boy had just watched his father abandon them. Some wounds don't bleed, but they leave scars that last forever. As Ethan looked into his mother's eyes, he asked the question no child should ever have to ask. Mom, is Daddy coming back? Amara forced herself to smile, not because she believed everything would be okay, but because mothers often hide their pain to protect the hearts of their children. I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise you one thing. You will never be alone. Just then, her phone began to ring. One phone call was about to change everything. Amara slowly reached into her handbag. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She glanced at the screen. Mr. Adewale, a name she hadn't expected to see. She wiped the tears from her face, took a deep breath, and answered the call. Good morning, Uncle Adewale. A calm voice responded. Amara, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Where are you? She looked around the crowded terminal. I'm at the airport. Our flight leaves in a few hours. For a brief moment, silence filled the call. Then his voice returned. The board of directors is already waiting. Amara closed her eyes. She had completely forgotten. Today wasn't just another day. Today, her father's final wish would become reality. Mr. Adewale spoke gently. Your late father's shares have officially been transferred. From this moment, you are the majority shareholder of Skirich Airlines. Amara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned toward the giant glass windows. Outside, a Skirich aircraft stood quietly on the rain-soaked runway. The same airline her father had spent his entire life building. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not because she had become wealthy, but because she wished he were still alive to see this day. She lowered her eyes. Ethan was asleep against her shoulder. His tiny hands still held onto her jacket. His breathing was slow. His face looked pale. At that moment, no company, no fortune, no title could ever mean more to her than the little boy in her arms. Softly, she spoke into the phone. Can the meeting wait? My son needs a doctor. Mr. Adewale didn't hesitate. Of course. Family comes first. We'll wait for you. For the first time that day, A faint smile appeared on Amara's face. She whispered, "Thank you." She ended the call. She thought the surprises were over. She was wrong, because only a few seconds later, someone was walking toward her, and everything inside the airport was about to change. The footsteps grew closer. Steady, confident, professional. Amara slowly looked up. Standing before her was a young airport operations manager, immaculately dressed, a warm smile on his face. He lowered his head respectfully. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Amara Okafor." Several passengers nearby turned their heads. The manager continued, "Mr. Adewale informed us you would be here. He asked us to ensure you and your son are comfortable." Without waiting for an answer, 2 airport attendants arrived. One carefully picked up her small suitcase. The other unfolded a wheelchair. Not for Amara, but for Ethan, just in case he became too weak to walk. Amara's eyes softened. She hadn't asked for any of this. Yet every gesture reminded her that kindness still existed. The manager smiled again. "Our executive medical lounge has already been prepared. A pediatric doctor is on the way, and refreshments have been arranged for you." For a brief moment, Amara was speechless, not because of the special treatment, but because someone had remembered. Her son came first. She looked down at Ethan, still sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. Then she nodded. "Thank you." As they began walking through the terminal, people couldn't help but stare. Only minutes ago, she had been sitting alone on a public bench. Now, airport staff surrounded her with quiet respect. No flashing cameras, no loud announcements, just silent dignity. Some whispered to one another, "Who is she? Is she a government official? Maybe she's an ambassador." Others simply watched, trying to understand why the airport management treated an ordinary-looking woman like royalty. But Amara never noticed. She wasn't thinking about attention. She wasn't thinking about status. Her entire world was the little boy resting in her arms. Far away, on the other side of the terminal, Daniel stood in line at the departure gate. He glanced at his boarding pass, completely unaware that only a few hundred meters behind him, the woman he had abandoned was quietly being escorted through the airport, like someone whose name carried extraordinary weight. He never looked back, and that would become the biggest mistake of his life. The airport slowly disappeared behind them. Every step echoed across the polished floor, not because the terminal was quiet, but because Amara's mind was somewhere else. She wasn't thinking about the company. She wasn't thinking about the meeting. She wasn't thinking about the fortune that now belonged to her. Her eyes never left Ethan. He rested peacefully against her shoulder. His little face was still pale. Every shallow breath made her heart ache. The airport operations manager slowed his pace. He gently opened a pair of glass doors. Beyond them was the executive medical lounge, far removed from the noise of the terminal. Inside, everything felt different. Soft lighting, comfortable leather chairs, fresh flowers, large windows overlooking the rain-soaked runway. A nurse stood waiting. She smiled warmly. "Mrs. Okafor, the pediatric doctor is on the way. Please, make yourself comfortable." Amara nodded gratefully. She carefully laid Ethan onto a reclining medical chair. Still asleep, he instinctively reached for her hand. She smiled through her tears. Without saying a word, she held his tiny hand, as if silently promising, "I'll never let go." Minutes later, the door opened again. An elderly man walked inside. His silver hair, his calm expression, and the respect everyone showed him made it clear he wasn't just another executive. It was Mr. Adewale, the man who had stood beside Amara's father for more than 30 years. He stopped a few feet away. His eyes rested on Ethan, then on Amara. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Some reunions need no introductions. Finally, Mr. Adewale smiled, a smile filled with pride and sadness. "You've become exactly the woman your father hoped you would be." Amara lowered her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I only wish he were here." Mr. Adewale looked toward the rain outside. "So do I. But today, his legacy lives through you." Outside, another aircraft slowly taxied toward the runway. And somewhere, on that same airport, Daniel sat inside his plane, growing impatient, still believing he had left an ordinary woman behind. He had no idea that destiny was quietly rewriting both of their lives. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Tiny drops slid slowly across the lounge windows, as if the sky itself shared Amara's sorrow. Inside, Ethan finally stirred. His little fingers tightened around his mother's hand. His eyes opened slowly. For a brief moment, he looked confused. Then he saw Amara. A faint smile appeared on his face. No words were needed. To Ethan, his mother was home. The nurse returned quietly. She gently checked his temperature, then smiled reassuringly. His fever is already coming down. It looks like we treated it in time. Amara released a long breath, one she didn't realize she'd been holding. Sometimes, the greatest victories are the quietest ones. Across the room, Mr. Adewale watched silently. He smiled, not because of business, but because he had just witnessed the kind of mother Amara had become. He stepped closer. There is something your father asked me to give you. From inside his leather briefcase, he carefully removed a worn brown envelope. The edges were slightly faded. Its seal had never been broken. Across the front were 5 handwritten words. To my daughter, when the time is right. Amara stared at it. Her hands trembled. She recognized her father's handwriting instantly. For years, Mr. Adewale had protected that letter, waiting for this exact day. With great care, he placed it into her hands. I promised your father I would never open it, and I never did. The room became completely silent. Even the rain outside seemed to fade away. Amara slowly broke the seal. Inside was a neatly folded letter, and beneath it, an old family photograph, one taken many years ago. A little girl, laughing beside her father, as they stood in front of a newly purchased airplane. A memory she thought she had forgotten. Tears filled her eyes. Some gifts cannot be measured by money. Some inheritances are far greater than wealth. Mr. Adewale quietly stepped back, giving her the privacy her father would have wanted. Outside, the board of directors continued waiting. None of them complained, because every person in that building understood one thing. Today was never about a company. It was about fulfilling a father's final wish. Meanwhile, inside the aircraft preparing for departure, Daniel leaned back in his seat, annoyed by the delay. He glanced once more through the rain-covered window, never realizing that the future he had walked away from was still waiting on the other side of the airport. For a long moment, Amara simply stared at the letter in her hands. The paper had grown old, but her father's handwriting was as familiar as the sound of his voice. Slowly, she unfolded it. The room became silent. Only the gentle rhythm of rain could be heard beyond the glass. She began to read. My dearest Amara, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer beside you. A tear rolled gently down her cheek. His words felt as though he were speaking to her once again. I know you never cared for wealth. You never asked for power. And that is exactly why I chose you. Mr. Adewale lowered his head. He remembered the day those words had been written. I built Skirich Airlines. One flight, one passenger, one dream at a time. But no company will ever be greater than the people who trust it. Amara held the letter close. Every sentence felt like a conversation she never had the chance to finish. Her father continued, if you ever become the leader, lead with kindness. Never let success change your heart. And if one day you must choose between money and family, choose family. Every single time. Amara closed her eyes. A quiet sob escaped her lips. She had already made that choice. Without realizing it, she had honored her father's final wish. Mr. Adewale smiled gently. He knew you would. He always believed your heart would become your greatest strength. Amara carefully folded the letter. She placed it back inside the envelope, then looked toward Ethan. He was sleeping peacefully once again, his tiny hand still resting in hers. At that moment, she understood something. Her father hadn't left her a fortune. He had left her a responsibility. Outside the executive medical lounge, the board of directors remained gathered. Some checked their watches. Others quietly reviewed documents. But not one person suggested beginning the meeting, because every executive had received the same instruction. We wait for Miss Amara Okafor. Inside the lounge, Mr. Adewale's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, then smiled. They're ready, he said softly, but only when you are. Amara looked one last time at her sleeping son, then back at the envelope. She stood slowly, not as a wealthy woman, not as a businesswoman, but as a daughter, determined to honor her father's legacy. Meanwhile, Far across the airport, the aircraft doors finally closed. Daniel leaned back, completely unaware that the woman he had abandoned was about to walk into a room where every seat would rise the moment she entered, and for the very first time, the true weight of her father's legacy would be revealed. The executive medical lounge fell silent once again. Amara took one last look at Ethan. She gently brushed his hair aside, then leaned down and kissed his forehead. "I'll be right back," she whispered softly. The nurse smiled reassuringly. "We'll stay with him. You have my word." Amara nodded, then turned toward the waiting door. Mr. Adewale walked beside her. Neither of them spoke. Some moments needed no conversation. Outside, the board members were still waiting. The instant the lounge doors opened, every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward Amara. She wasn't dressed like a billionaire. No expensive jewelry, no designer handbag, no bodyguards, just a simple navy blue blazer, a cream blouse, and quiet confidence. The boardroom doors slowly opened. Mr. Adewale stepped aside. With quiet respect, he gestured toward the entrance. "After you." Amara hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of the responsibility waiting inside. She took a deep breath, then walked in. At that exact moment, every member of the board rose to their feet, not because of her wealth, not because of her father's name, but because they respected the values he had left behind. The room remained silent until the chairman spoke. "Welcome home, Miss Amara Okafor." A quiet emotion filled the room. Some of the older directors smiled. Others lowered their heads respectfully. They remembered the little girl who used to run through these offices, holding her father's hand. Now, she stood before them, ready to carry his legacy. Mr. Adewale walked to the head of the long conference table. He carefully placed a leather-bound folder in front of Amara. Inside were the official transfer documents. The chairman looked around the room, then spoke clearly. "Today, we are not simply appointing a new majority shareholder. We are fulfilling the final wish of our founder." No one applauded. No one celebrated. The moment was too meaningful for noise. Amara slowly placed her father's letter beside the official documents. She rested one hand upon it, as if drawing strength from the man who had believed in her long before anyone else did. Outside, rain continued to fall over the runway. Far above the clouds, Daniel's aircraft climbed higher into the sky. He looked out of the window, thinking he had left his old life behind. He couldn't have imagined that at the very same moment, the woman he abandoned was beginning a future he would one day desperately wish he had never walked away from. 3 days later, the rain had finally stopped. Morning sunlight stretched across the city as Skirich Airlines welcomed another busy day. Inside the headquarters, employees hurried through the corridors. But something had changed. Hope filled the building once again. At the children's hospital, Ethan sat upright on his bed. Color had returned to his face. The doctors smiled. "The treatment is working." Amara closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she whispered, "Thank you." Some victories cannot be measured by money. A child's smile is worth more than any fortune. Across the city, Daniel stepped out of a taxi. His suitcase rolled behind him. The business deal he had traveled for had collapsed. The investors had withdrawn. The company he hoped would change his life had chosen another partner. Frustrated, he pulled out his phone. No messages from Amara. No missed calls. For the first time, silence felt heavy as he searched for another opportunity. A giant digital billboard across the street lit up. People stopped walking. Some even raised their phones. A live news broadcast had begun. The reporter spoke with excitement. "Today marks a new chapter for Skirich Airlines. The company's new majority shareholder has officially assumed leadership." Daniel barely looked up until the camera turned toward the stage. His suitcase slipped from his hand. His breathing stopped. Standing before dozens of reporters was Amara, calm, confident, graceful, the same woman he had abandoned at the airport. Behind her, the board of directors stood proudly. Beside her, Mr. Adewale smiled. The reporter continued. "Miss Amara Okafor says the future of Skirich Airlines will be built on compassion, integrity, and service." Daniel shook his head. "No, it can't be." Memory after memory rushed through his mind. The airport. Ethan asking, "Daddy, are you coming back?" Amara standing alone, walking away, without looking back. He finally understood. She had never hidden who she was. He had simply never taken the time to know her. That evening, Daniel went to the children's hospital. His hands trembled as he reached the room. The door was slightly open. Inside, Ethan laughed softly. Amara sat beside him, reading a storybook. For a moment, Daniel simply watched. The family he had thrown away was slowly healing. Without him, he knocked gently. Amara looked up. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. Daniel stepped inside. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I was selfish. I thought money would make me happy. I was wrong. I hurt you. And I hurt our son." Tears filled his eyes. "I don't deserve another chance. But I needed to tell you. I'm sorry." Silence filled the room. Amara looked at Ethan, then back at Daniel. "I forgive you." The word surprised him. But before hope could return, she continued, "Forgiveness doesn't always mean going back. Some doors close, so better ones can open." Daniel lowered his head. He understood. This wasn't revenge. It was the consequence of the choice he had made. Amara stood. She walked to the window. Sunlight poured into the room. "My father taught me that success means nothing if you lose yourself chasing it. I won't teach Ethan to live with bitterness, but I will teach him to value those who stand beside him when life becomes difficult." Daniel quietly nodded. He had no words left. He turned and slowly walked away. This time, he was the one who didn't look back. Days later, Skirich Airlines announced a new foundation, providing free medical flights for critically ill children across Nigeria. It was the very first initiative, approved by Amara, not in honor of wealth, but in honor of compassion. As the first aircraft lifted into the sky, Amara stood beside Ethan, watching from the airport observation deck. Ethan reached for her hand. "Mom, Grandpa would be proud." Amara smiled through gentle tears. "Yes, I think he would." The aircraft disappeared into the clouds. A new beginning, carried by hope. Not every story ends with people finding each other again. Sometimes, the happiest ending is finding yourself.